Good evening, everybody.
Did you go to London?
No, it'll have to be another time. Did you do anything on bank holiday?
Just took off work with the children, did a barbecue, a pool, whatever.
That's nice. Was it hot enough? Yeah, it was quite hot actually.
Yeah, it was about 23 today.
When I went outside, and I did a bit. I had a min in my garden. We have a min in my garden. It's getting very everywhere has min on. John's quite.
Yeah.
Where I
None
live,
of them are becoming.
where I live, just from past Habers till I think there are 3 minyonim, and in each one there's an oven. Uri Falk, David Hammond, and Jolowski.
Wow, yeah, Rotenbach has one, no?
Wait, no, that's the other side.
Rotenbach has one, no?
Oh, did you have a nephew today?
Oh, wow. Yes, yeah.
Mazel tov.
Oh, Tieshka.
How do you do the minion?
We took away the panels between the back gardens. Our back garden is quite small on this side of King's Road. It's only like 2-3 meters wide by 2-3 meters long. So we took away the back panels, and so did our neighbors. So we've got like 4 or 5 families actually, all one after the next. If everybody would come, we'd actually have quite a big minyan, about 18 people. But, no. Right.
I wish I had one for Shavuot.
No. Say them. Well, there's a small chance we'll be able to finish the perek, so I need to start straight away. We're continuing with the halachas of what is considered important to carry, important that one is chayav if one carries on Shabbos. It has to be something of value. So we're up to the Mishnah on Daf Pei Amud Beis, which is about a third before the bottom. Adamo, if a person carries earth on Shabbos, how much is valuable? Akiva says enough that you can seal a sack. Enough to seal a letter. Here I've got a sweet picture. That's enough to seal a letter, if you ever see the old day letters, and this is to seal a sack. A sack, you need much more soil, earth, to create a seal. But it's machlikas how much earth exactly. Is zever, fertilizer, b'chol hadak, and fine sand, in order to fertilize one stalk of a cabbage. In order to fertilize a leek. Each one has a different amount of shitta. What is considered valuable? Chol gas, thick sand, in order to put on a spoonful of lime. We will explain this. Kana, a feather, is kulmus, in order to make a pen. If the feather is very, very thick, it is so thick that you can't use it as a quill, or it's cracked and you can't use it as a feather, as a quill, then enough that you can cook with it a light egg, trufa, when it's been beaten, and put inside the pot. That means if you've got a feather, which can be used as a quill, so then its value is enough that you can use it as a pen. But if it's broken, or it's very thick and can't be used as a pen, so its value is only as fuel. So if it's big enough that using it as fuel, you can make with it, you heat with it an egg which has been stirred, then one is chayav. So here it's got a picture. Here you can see this is a sefer holding a quill. If you notice, a quill which is very, very, very short is very hard to hold. It has to be a certain length for it to reach his knuckles. If you imagine you've got a very, very short pen, like 2 centimeters long, it's extremely difficult. So just notice the feather has to be quite long. It has to reach his knuckles. But if it's broken, can you see this is a broken feather? So then it has to be big enough that you can heat up a scrambled egg in a pot. So therefore, if it's got enough, the fuel which you can produce from this one feather is enough to heat up an egg, then one is chai. Says the Gemara, Amole kafsit, Tana, the Baisa explains, there were people that would paint or lime your house, and they would have a shovel full of lime. You'd have to add some sand. That's how much sand one is chayav for. We see from this Mishnah that adding sand to lime makes the lime better. Who holds that? Omar Chisda Rabbi Yehudi, the Tanya, we have a brisa. We have a brisa which discusses a special halacha that after the churban, one is not supposed to have a house which is too beautiful to remind us of the churban. So therefore, you always have to have what we call an amal amo. And furthermore, you're not supposed to use good quality lime around your house. So the brisa says like this: if you add straw or sand into the lime, so it's not so good quality, then you're allowed to, but otherwise not. That by adding sand, it makes the lime even better, not worse. Again, the Mishnah says that if a person carries sand, how much does he have to carry to be chayav in order to use for a shovel full of lime? So we see that people would add sand to lime. Yet we have a machlekes in the brisa regarding putting lime on the wall that Tanakama holds is forbidden. And therefore, Tanakama holds it's permitted. Why is it permitted? Because it makes the lime diluted and not so white, and therefore it's permitted to put it on your walls, and it's not considered a lack of cover for the Beis Hamikdash that you're making your walls too beautiful. Rabbi Yehuda holds that by putting in sand it's permitted because sand makes the lime not so nice. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, do people add? So according to Rabbi Yehuda, people do add sand to lime. But according to the Chamim, they don't, because by adding it, it makes it look worse. So the Gemara says, no. It's an interesting svara over here. You've got a shovel full of lime, which you cannot use. Why can't you use it? Because it's too white. You add a bit of sand to it, and now it's no longer so white, and now you can use it for your walls. So therefore, it has a value in the fact that now you could actually use it. Before you couldn't use it, now you can. So therefore, even according to the Chachamim, that adding sand makes the lime worse, it makes it worse that it's not as white. But it makes it better in now that you can use it. So therefore, the Mishnah says that if you carry sand, one is chayav, fitting even according to the Chachamim, even though according to them, adding sand makes it worse, but nevertheless, since by making it worse, now you can use it on your walls, therefore by carrying it on the Shabbos, you're carrying something of value. That means Rabbi Yehuda holds adding sand to lime makes the lime better. The Chachamim hold adding sand to lime makes it worse. So according to the Chachamim, carrying sand on Shabbos for lime should not be chayav. And so, well, yes, you are chayav, because even though it makes it worse, it makes it less white. But it makes it better that now you can use it because it's less white. So therefore, it's forbidden to carry it on Shabbos. Konuk delas is kulmus. Ton, we learned in the brisa kulmus a pen amagia lekishra isboisav that reaches the knuckles. As I pointed out, a quill which is very, very, very short, let's say it's only 1 centimeter long, it's impossible to write with. So therefore, if a quill has to be of value to write with, it has to reach the knuckles. Which knuckles does it have to be? Does it have to be the middle knuckle or the last knuckle over here? When you hold a pen, so therefore you can actually write with it only reaching your middle knuckle, without it actually reaching the higher one. Or do we mean that it has to be long enough for the upper knuckle? If you afterwards take a pencil, cut it, you'll see it is actually possible to write with a pencil which reaches the lower knuckle. But it's more comfortable with a higher one. So the question is in our Mishnah, which says that the quill has to be long enough, that it has to reach, that it has to be able to be right with, does mean the lower one or the higher joint of the hand. Says the Gemara, Teiku, we don't know. If it was a thick quill or a broken one which cannot be used, so then it has to be big enough that it can fuel the cooking of one egg. Tona trufa b'shemen, that it has to be beaten with oil and the sunnah be'ilfas and put inside a pot. Omalei ma'bei d'avina lebrei mish melech beitza kalomahi. The Mishnah just says an easy egg, so a light egg. What is a light egg? Omalei, so he said to him, beyaso detzultzelo, the egg of a dove. The egg of a dove is quite small. I've actually once seen it. It's a very, very small egg, about a 10th or 20th of the size of our eggs. So that is the kind of egg which the Mishnah is talking about. Ma'atam b'shum dezutzo, because it's small. So let's say the tzifrato of a hummingbird, which is even smaller. Ishtik, they kept quiet. Have you heard anything about it? We're talking about the egg of a chicken. That means, even though the egg of a chicken is not the smallest egg, it's not the tiniest, not the lightest of eggs, but it's the easiest to cook. It cooks with the most minimal amount of heat. Therefore, when the Mishnah says that the feather has to be big enough that it can cook an egg, it's referring not to the smallest egg, but to the egg which can be cooked the easiest, and that's the egg of a chicken. The egg of a chicken might be bigger than the egg of a dove, but it's easier to cook. Why normally in Shabbos, when we talk about something of significance, we talk about the size of a dried fig? And here suddenly we talk about an egg. We mean a egg, the size of a fig of a light egg. Meaning, what you have to do is like this. If you've got a quill and you do not know if it's valuable, you have to see, does it have enough substance to create enough heat to cook the size of a dried fig of a light egg? So you take an egg, scramble it, and add oil. Rashi says by adding oil, it makes it easier to cook. And then you take the size of a dried fig from the egg, put it inside the oven, and see if by heating up this feather, whatever it is, quill, whether it's bigger, whether it can produce enough heat in order to cook it. If yes, that is enough of a shiur to be chayav, and if not, not. Says the Mishnah Daf Pe'alef from Adalef, continuing with Moshum, etzem, a bone. The last is talvo, to make a spoon. So I'm sure every Friday night when you finish eating the chicken, you don't throw the chicken bones in the bin. That would be what you call wasting. As we pointed out yesterday, the recycling of the olden days would put everything we do into shame. They would take the chicken bones and they would make out of it spoons. Like you see a picture over here, a spoon. So after the meal Friday night, I'm sure you'll use all your chicken bones, make yourself nice cutlery sets. That way you only need to buy them for Pesach or whatever. The last is menu chof, in order to make a lock. Right, you can make a lock if you see over here, a lock made out of bones and a spoon made out of bones. So either one is forbidden. That's if you take a chicken bone or meat bone outside, how big does it have to be of value? If you can make out of it a spoon or a lock. Schuchis, a piece of glass, in order to scrape with it the end of the karka. So we'll see what happens is when you do this loom business, what happens is some of the threads get tangled. So you take a stick and you put a piece of glass at the end of the stick, and then you use the stick to divide the threads that they should not get tangled. So a tiny piece of glass can be used, right, to split the threads from each other. Tzvoi, a pebble or even or a stone, to throw it at a bird to shoo it away. As when Yaakov to shoo an animal away. Whereas when Yaakov holds to shoo a bird, you don't need to throw a stone at it. How do you shoo a bird? You shout, and the bird runs away. So therefore, a stone which is only big enough to make a bird move off is useless. But a stone which will make a cow move off or a sheep move off, that is considered of value. Again, to carry something on Shabbos is always forbidden. But in order to be chayav, one has to carry something which has got significance. The Tanna Kama holds a stone, which if you throw it at a bird will make the bird move away. That's valuable, and therefore a person considers it important. But Lezman Yaakov says no, a person will not consider such a stone important, because to shoo a bird away, it just needs to make a small amount of noise and the bird will move. Rather, it has to be the size that can make an animal move away. Says the Gemara, remember, if you remember in our Mishnah, we had the machlokas, how big a bone has to be in order to be chayav. Tanna Kama says the size of a spoon. Rabbi Yehuda says the size of a lock. Which one would you consider bigger, a spoon or a lock? Most people would say to you, a lock is bigger. A lock, imagine a padlock, let's say. If that's the case, then it comes out that Rabbi Yehuda says a large amount in Tanna Kama. And as we've said many times, Rabbi Yehuda says a smaller amount, because when we talked about a reed, Rabbi Yehuda said the amount to fit, to measure the foot of a little child. And the Tanna Kama said, in order to make a hook for a sieve. And that is bigger than the amount to measure the foot of a child. Says the Gemara, that how can Rabbi Yehuda say a lock, A lock is bigger than a spoon. And generally, we've always been saying that Yehuda says smaller than the Tanakama. Says about this. Remember the Shuda Yehuda Nofish? Or Kaimon on the Shuda Abana Nofish. We know that Yehuda always says less, the Chum say more. Oma Ola Chofi Pesachas. We mean the teeth of a lock. If you ever look at a lock, it always has what we call, I think, tumblers in English, or teeth. And the teeth of the lock would be made out of tiny little bones. So now, the big chicken bones you will save to make spoons. The little chicken bones you will save to make tumblers and to make the teeth of a lock. And that is what the Mishnah means over here. So it comes out, according to Tanakama, it has to be big enough to make a spoon. According to Yehuda, it has to be big enough to make the teeth of a lock. So which one is bigger? Obviously, the Tanakama is bigger. And that fits in with the general rule that Yehuda is more machmir, that he holds even a smaller measure is forbidden. Tanu Rabbanon. Chofi posachas, the teeth of a lock, tohiv the tohoy, because as they are by themselves, they are useless. The teeth of a lock by themselves cannot be used. If you stick them in to a lock, that means you put them and you assemble them into a lock to mail, then they are tummy. Why are they tummy? Because now they're useful. V'shel if it's of a doorway, even if you connect them to the door and bang them in with nails, anything which is attached to the door is like the floor, is like the karka. Meaning, a house is not mekabel tumah. That's one of the halachas we know. Therefore, anything adjoining the house is also not mekabel tumah. So the door is also not mekabel tumah because it's attached to the house. The lock of the door, in those days, it's not like the keys that we have nowadays, where the key, okay, now even the lock inside the door is attached to the door. So the lock inside the door is not tummy. So again, the teeth of a lock by themselves are not useful. You cannot use them in any way. You can't have a drink with them. They're just small pieces of bone. Once you've established them into a lock, let's say use them as a lock for a chest, Rashi says, or for a bag, then they're mekabel tumah because they are keli. If you attach them to a doorway, they're not mekabel tumah. Why not? Because anything which is mechubel karka is not mekabel tumah. Schochis, glass. As explained in the Mishnah, they would use the glass to put at the edge of a toothpick, let's say, and in that way, glass can be very, very, very thin. And if you want to divide between the threads so they shouldn't get tangled in the loom, so what you used to do is use this tiny pick to divide the threads that they shouldn't get tangled. Tana, advice says, chochis is also glass, in order to be able to cut two threads ke'achas. Glass, besides being able to divide threads, can also cut threads, because glass is very sharp. And maybe explains it's the same shiur, it's exactly the same as our Mishnah, just another way to measure it. Either enough glass to separate tangled threads, or enough glass to cut two threads. That is the amount of glass, if one carries on Shabbos, one is chayav. Svoyo even, k'tei lizik ba'oif, to throw at a bird, the animal and the bird have to feel the stone. If it's such a thin stone, they don't feel it, it's not considered important. What is the shiur? If it weighs the equivalent of a coin, which is 10 zuz, that is enough that an animal feels it. So if you carry a pebble on Shabbos, which an animal or bird feels, then that is considered something important, and therefore it is chayav for carrying. Now the Gemara is going to talk a lot about going to the bathroom and how one wipes himself. The connection to this is like this. First of all, it's got a lot of halachas Shabbos because every stone, as we know, is muktzah. Which muktzah is it? Anybody know which muktzah is the stone?
No use.
What's it called? Noshna Kodesh. Muktzah machmas gufoy. No. Muktzah machmas gufoy. Muktzah machmas gufoy. That's something else. Muktzah machmas gufoy has got no use. So therefore, it's got a shaila can use stones because it's Shabbos. Also, enough stones that would be enough to wipe oneself is enough that they are important. And therefore, if one was to carry them on Shabbos, one would be chayav because of the fact that they are valuable. So most is like this. Zoinin was the name of a person. Zoinin. All the baby came to Beisavedash. Omalu Aboisai. In the olden days, they used to use stones. They didn't have toilet paper. So they used to use stones. So How big should they be? They said to him, the size of an olive and not an egg. The pshat is like this, that when one wipes himself, one uses first a smaller stone, then a bigger stone, and even a bigger stone. Why? Because one wants to get first to the place which is the closest to the hole, or that way to clean there. Then once one cleans there, one wants to clean the outer area and then the further outer area. So you always want to use a slightly bigger stone every time. If you used to use the big stone, you'd then be clearing the exterior, the interior would still be dirty, then later it would just get wiped around. So therefore first you go inside, then further out. So you start off with a smaller stone, then a bigger stone, and a bigger stone. So Omar Lahu, he said to them, are you going to have to carry a scales around with you every time you go to the bathroom? Because according to them, on Shabbos, to take stones, which we said, you're allowed to take stones on Shabbos, because even though stones are muktzah, they permitted it because of kvod adam, that person should be able to wipe themselves. Therefore, the same thing, you're allowed to carry stones for kvod adam. But which size stones? We said, like these three different complicated shurim. If that's the case, every time a person goes to the bathroom, he's going to have to take with him a pair of scales to make sure he's got the right stones. Nimnu v'gomus, they decided you're right. It's impossible to go to be such specific sizes. The amount that you can fit in a handful of stones. It's a machlokes tanoim. Can you take enough stones for a handful or 3 stones? Mishmur Paschals, you're allowed to take a handful of stones. So, but Maisa, Binadin, they said first 3. What happened was it got too complicated to take the exact 3 stones. So they said a handful of stones. The Shabbos 3 sharp stones, because these stones cannot be like squarish stones, because then can't use to be wiped with. They have to be like tile-shaped stones, where they're like the sharp, the thin at the end. The camel shiur, how big? The Meir says all 3 stones should be the exact same size. It should be the size of a nut. Yehuda make a beit, so they should all be the size of an egg. The same machlokes is regarding an esrog. Does it have to be like an egg, or does it have to be like the size of a nut? Says the Gemara, the esrog is a mafurish mishnah. The machlokes. This is a brisa. The mishnayos were much more well known than the brisas. Everybody knew mishnayos, not everybody knew brisas. So the Gemara says like this: Hasa masnisin, there it's a mishnah. Hocha brisa, here it's a brisa. Why do you say, just like they argue here, they also argue about esrogim? Esrogim, everybody knows. This they don't know. And look, machlokes be'esrog, machlokes kan. Just like in machlokes regarding esrogim, they're machlokes here. So if a person, everybody knows the mishnah in Sukkah, that they argue how big an esrog has to be, like the size of an egg or the size of a nut. So who are doing similarly, they argue about which stones a person should carry to the bathroom on Shabbos. Should it be the size of an esrog, the size of an egg, or the size of a nut? One has to be aware that we paskin that it should be this. An esrog has to be the size of an egg. If you take the most chamur shiur of an egg, of the volume and everything else, it's approximately the weight of 95 gram. 95 gram. And what happens is esrogim shrink the entire week of Sukkot. The reason is because they have liquid inside them. So in the heat and the touching, the liquid goes down a bit. An esrog less than 110 gram is certainly kosher. But if you want to be really mehuda, you should make sure that your esrog weighs at least 110 gram. I've actually seen people take esrogim which are significantly less than that. And it's unfortunate because it's not something which is so hard to get. That's how halacha l'maisa, one has to, if one wants to be machnik on the Shiur Chazon Ish, there has to be a proper size to the esrog. These very small esrogim are no good. Okay. You're not allowed to take.
Do we go for the weight of the stones even if they don't be used for the person? For example, they're square like you said before.
No, so then you can't take them to the bathroom. If you can't take square stones to the bathroom because they're not useful. You can only take stones.
For those stones.
Only those stones are allowed. Other stones are forbidden. You're not allowed to take pious to the bathroom. My pious. It's clods of earth from Boven. Clods of earth, if a person tries to wipe themselves with it, they crumble. Since they crumble, they do not do a good job. and therefore one's not allowed to carry them on Shabbos to the bathroom because he's just taking muktzah for no reason. You're not allowed to, when a person needs to go to the bathroom, it's not going, it's got constipation. What they used to do is they used to feel around the hole with their stone or with their fingers, and by doing that, it would induce themselves to be able to go to the bathroom properly. Says Robert, one's not allowed to do that on Shabbos, says Tosfos, because, okay, we'll stick to Tosfos. The point is like this, that the Rashi explains the reason is because there's a lot of hairs around their hole there. And by using a stone, one will end up cutting, which is the issa of goyses. So one's not allowed to use a stone to feel around because one will cut the hair. That's a kasha that Domashim is chaven. So this says it's a psik ratio. It's a psik ratio. It's definitely going to happen if you take a stone there, that hairs will come up. Okay, anyway. So the Lord says you can't do it. You can't do it. You can't do this on Shabbos. Start feeling around this. So, should you get in danger? Constipation is very dangerous. More later will tell us that constipation is very dangerous. Therefore, since it's dangerous, what should you do? And it's more kalachayad. You're allowed to do it, but to do it in a shinu, to do it in a different manner. And since you do it in a different manner, therefore, some should explain, therefore, the hairs won't come out. And some say that even if they do, since it's kalachayad, therefore it's okay. Omar B'yana. If a person has a fixed place, he always goes to the bathroom, he's allowed to take a handful. If not, he's allowed to take like the balance. The balance, if you think about it, there were 3 stones we talked about before. One the size of a nut, one the size of an egg, and one size of an olive. What's the middle one, the balanced one, is the middle one is the nut. So therefore, you're allowed to take like the size of a nut. The reason is like this. When a person has an established bathroom, we're not so concerned that he might take too many stones. Why not? Because if he takes too many stones, the worst comes to worst. The next time he goes there, he'll use the stones he took previously. So therefore, he hasn't taken muktzah for no reason. If a person has not got a fixed bathroom and he carries too many stones, then what happens is the next time he goes to the bathroom, he'll go to another place, which means that he carried stones the first time for no reason. So if a person has established bathroom, the Shmuel brings this down. If a person has established bathroom, he can carry more stones because we're not so concerned that he'll take too many, because even if he takes too many, either him or someone else will use the stones next time. I just like to point out, more halacha l'maisa, we don't use stones nowadays. We use toilet paper. And 99% of the time, you hope that there's cut up tissues. But on rare occasions, it can happen, you go to the bathroom and there isn't any cut up toilet paper. Now, we just saw that the Gemara says one is allowed to do an Issa D'Rabbanan for the sake of Kavod Adam. So the halacha is that one should do like this. One should wipe themselves without cutting and then let the paper fall into the bowl and then flush it with the paper in the bowl. And what happens is you can pull loads. And then what happens is the water will then cut. That is the most lechatchiladic way. If a person cannot do that, he is allowed to cut, but better not on the perforated lines. I'm being very bekitzer because I don't want to get behind the daf. But the best way to do it is to take the paper and to use it without cutting it, and then to let it fall in the bowl, and then by flushing it, the flow of the water will cut it away, and then the rest can stay on the wall. Okay, we see one is allowed. But if one doesn't have a fixed place, he says you can only take less, can only take like a nut. Sometimes they used to use stones to pound on spices, to grind the spices. Those stones were more valuable. They were not muktzah machmas gufa, they were muktzah machmas chesson kiss. They were very valuable, these stones. So these stones, the Gemara's got to Shaila, are you allowed to use them to wipe yourself on Shabbos? Because they're more valuable, they're more precious. Since they're more precious, the Issa Muktzah is greater. If they've got a sign, witness, meaning you can see remnants of somebody else having used this particular stone for wiping, then it is mutter. Because since somebody else used it, it's no longer precious. It's only precious, let's say there's a unique kind of stone, which a person uses to wipe for pounding the spices, right? But now that somebody's used it, nobody's going to use it for pounding the spices. So therefore, it is permitted to carry it into the bathroom because it's not a problem of muktzah. Meisvei, how can you use the same stone that somebody else used? We ask the kasha from a brisa that tells us that there are certain things that create stomach aches. What are they? 10 things bring a person to bad stomach aches. The good English is hemorrhoids. If he eat leaves from a reed, leaves from a vine, sprouts from a vine. If you eat the rich parts of an animal without salt, the rich parts is like, let's say, the throat of an animal. The throat of an animal has a lot of ridges. Eating that without salt is not good. The shidru shadak, eating the spine of a fish. The dag bishop called solchoy, or a fish which has been salted, which is not being cooked. Drink wine sediments. A person wipes himself with lime or earthenware. And if you use a stone which a person's friend used, it creates hemorrhoids. Some do squats in the bathroom where he doesn't sit on anything. The pressure that he puts to relieve is so strong that it can cause illnesses. Anyway.
We had a similar Gemara in Brochus.
Yes, exact same Gemara in Brochus. Exact same Gemara. The question is that how can the Gemara say that if a person has a stone for pounding the spices, one's allowed to use it as long as you can see that it's been used before? The problem is if it's been used before, they're not allowed to use it at all because it's not dangerous. The Gemara gives 3 answers. If there's a moist remainder of somebody else's using, then it's no good. If it's already dried up, then it's okay. If somebody's used it on both sides, one should not use it. If somebody else has used it on one side, one can use the other side. If a person's used it himself, he can use it again. If his friend used it, he shouldn't use it again. So all these 3 explanations basically go with the same principle, that it's more mos. If it's being used, either it's still moist, it's not dried up yet, the excrement on it, or if somebody else used it, or he's used both sides, then you can't use it again. But if it's not, then it is permitted. So therefore, when we say over here that you're allowed to use a stone which is meant for pounding spices, if it's been used before, we're talking about either it's dry or your person used it himself only used one side. What happens if the rain came, cleaned the stone, and now it's a precious stone again? So can you take it to the bathroom? If they can still see a sign on it that it's been used for the bathroom, therefore people get put off, and then people won't use it for pounding the stones, and therefore pounding their spices, and therefore it is mutter to take it to the bathroom. We're top of the Aleph from the base, continuing this halachas. Is one allowed to take these stones up to the rooftop? If a person decides to leave himself on the rooftop, taking stones to the roof, according to Rashi, is another problem. Besides from Muktzah, there's an Issa on Shabbos to do a Tircha Yeseva, to do extra effort. One's not allowed to do extra effort. Carrying these stones to the rooftop, is it mutter or not? That when it comes to the Kvoda Abrius, we push away that which is forbidden. And therefore, since a person needs these stones, he's allowed to carry these stones to wipe himself. Merima was saying over this halacha. What happens if a person had a meal? At the end of the meal, he's got food stuck between his teeth. So you need a toothpick. So Rabbi Lezer says, you can take a splinter from a log of wood, to pick out his teeth. You're not allowed to take it unless it's been prepared for an animal to eat. Why? A log of wood is muktzah because you have no intention to use it. But if it's been prepared before Shabbos for an animal to eat it, so it's not muktzah. So Rabbi Lezer says you're allowed to take muktzah to clean your teeth. Chachamim say, no, you're not allowed to take muktzah. Only if it's been prepared before Shabbos, then you're allowed to use it. We see from the Chachamim that they do not allow you to be over the issa of muktzah to clean your teeth. So why are you allowed to take stones up to the roof? And it's more, how can you compare? A person knows when he's going to eat, and therefore he should have prepared before Shabbos toothpicks for the place that it's going to eat. And the person established a place for the bathroom. A person doesn't know when he'll need to go to the bathroom. So therefore, a person can't prepare before Shabbos stones everywhere, and therefore he might suddenly need to go to the bathroom. Therefore, you can't compare. So therefore, when it comes to picking one's teeth, we say to him, prepare yourself before Shabbos. Don't wait till Shabbos and take a piece of muktzah to pick your teeth. By the bathroom, there we allow you to move to touch muktzah, because a person can't always prepare, a person doesn't always know when he'll need, and therefore we allow issa muktzah. Obviously, nowadays, our toothpicks, which have been set aside before Shabbos, of course, are permitted. The only one we're discussing which is forbidden is if you walk past the fence in your garden and you see a splinter coming off, and you decide to take it in order to clean one's teeth, that is forbidden. If you've got set aside toothpicks, that's absolutely fine. Also, the fun is near the Shabbos. You're not allowed to use a plowed field as a bathroom on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, "My time." What's the reason? Is it because of the fact that by walking somebody else's field, you'll step over the plowing and ruin the plowing? The plowing would make furrows in the field and to loosen the soil. By walking in his field, you're going to ruin all the effort that he made in the plowing. So if the problem is because of mazik, that you're damaging his plowed field, so why did he say you shouldn't do it on Shabbos? You're never allowed to do it. The problem is that when a person's field is plowed, everything in the field grows better. So even the stones in the field start producing produce. So the stones in the field will suddenly grow on them grass. Now, if a person uses that field to relieve oneself, then what will happen is, afterwards he'll want to wipe himself. What will he use to wipe himself? The stones of the plowed field. The stones of a plowed field have grass on them. And while he's wiping himself, what will happen is the grass will come off the stone. So what has he done? The issa of koitza. So that's why you can't use a plowed field on Shabbos. That one is allowed to. That one is allowed to use a stone even if it's got glass on. When a person needs to wipe himself on Shabbos, he's allowed to use a stone even if it's got glass going on it. But Shabbos, if a person pulls the glass off on Shabbos, it's chayav chatos. And we'll explain this all later. And it says, if a person uses a plowed field on Shabbos to relieve himself, the problem is like this. While he's relieving himself, he may see stones on the floor. And what he'll do is, or clods of earth, and he'll start moving them around to fit into the furrows and to make sure that the ground is smooth and straight to be planted with. And he'll be over this. If a person's got a hole in the ground in his house and he blocks it up on Shabbos, he's building. We said earlier, just last week, that by preparing a field for planting purposes is a issa chayrish. So if a person uses a field which has just been plowed, he'll then, while he's there, make the field straighter and better for others, especially as he's taking to wipe the stones, or put the stones back in a way that will then make the field more prepared for planting. So therefore, he'll be over the issa chayrish, and therefore it's a issa chayrish. That's why one's not allowed to go to a plowed field on Shabbos. A stone that's got on it grass, but to pull it off, Parfisa is a plant pot which is perforated, it's got holes inside it. Showing it till Tula, you're allowed to move it around. Because if you're not allowed to move it around, then the stone which has got grass growing on it, is very similar to a plant pot which has plants growing on it. So therefore we see that just like you're allowed to take a stone to wipe oneself which got grass on it, you're allowed to move a plant pot on Shabbos. They only permitted it when a person needs to go to the bathroom on Shabbos, but they didn't permit it stam. And with Paskan, one's not allowed to move a perforated plant pot on Shabbos. If a person's got a perforated plant pot on the floor, he should not, unless the person has, let's say, carpet or something like that, tiles to stop it. If a person's got a plant pot, let's say, in his garden, and he moves a plant pot around, he's been over an Issa on Shabbos. And there's a very, very famous story that there was a Talmud of the Chazon Ish that once came into the Chazon Ish and asked him, that in Eretz Yisrael, they have earthenware balatas. That means tiles made out of earth, hard earth. Are they allowed to move a plant pot? Chazal said, no, you're not allowed to. And the Talmud said, I can't believe such a thing. Of course you're allowed to. You really believe that the plant pot is growing from the ground underneath? And to demonstrate to the Chazal Ish that the Chazal Ish was wrong, he picked up a plant pot which was on the floor and he said, look. And as he picked it up, he saw that a root had grown from the plant pot through the whole of the perforated plant pot all the way into the ground. And he saw the Chazal Ish was right. And the first has to be very careful. There's an interesting shuvas for him. Try to find things which more negel l'maisa. Is let's say you've got these plant pots which are hanging in the air and you walk underneath. Is there a problem of kreitza? So one of these shayas which people ask, the ma'isa halach is it's mutter, it's okay. The shayah is, why is it okay? When you walk underneath a plant pot, you're actually, according to this logic, you're actually cutting the source from the plant pot to the ground, because we just said that the plant pot, which has got nothing between it and the ground, grows and it draws its life from the ground. The simplest answer why it's permitted is because it's not sealed. When you walk underneath, there's still air around where you can pick up from, and you're not actually sealing it off. It's one of these interesting shaylas. Says the Gemara, this plant
So it
pot.
was perforated, that it has holes in it.
Yes, that's right. Perforated means it's got holes inside it. A plant pot which has no holes inside it, you can move around because it's already cut off from the ground. Plant pot, if it was on the floor, and you put it onto pegs, because you've uprooted it. If you put it down on the floor, then you're chayav because of planting. Says because we said the closer you bring it to the ground, the more it draws life from the ground, and therefore makes it awesome. You're not allowed to use a piece of earthenware, pottery, to wipe yourself on Shabbos. The Gemara later discusses whether it's dangerous to use earthenware to wipe yourself. So if the Pam Nabichin holds like the man Omar that is dangerous, then why did he say Shabbos? Even on the weekdays it's forbidden. The Gemara later tells us that people that use earthenware pots to wipe themselves are more susceptible or more prone to get damaged by magic. The problem is because it cut the hair, which is forbidden on Shabbos because of curses, and stones don't cut the hair so much. But earthenware, because it's sharper, will cut the hair around the area, and that's forbidden on Shabbos. Is a dovish in the miskaven. One says, if a great person like Avichnon says something, name what I'm going to explain to you a reason as follows. That really Rabbi Yehuda forbids one to use earthenware on Shabbos and on weekday. Rabbi Yehuda holds it's always forbidden. Oh, why did Rabbi Yehuda say Shabbos? Because Rabbi Yehuda holds it's forbidden because of witchcraft. That if a person uses earthenware, it's dangerous because it makes a person more prone to be damaged by witchcraft. But it says that, well, if that's the case, so why did Rabbi Yehuda talk about forbidding it on Shabbos? Rabbi Yehuda should have said it's forbidden at all times. It says the word like this. Of course you're not allowed to do a weekday. Why? Because it's dangerous to use earthenware. You might have thought that on Shabbos it is better to use earthenware. Why is it better to use earthenware? Because the stone is muktzah, because it's muktzah machmas kufa, you can't use it. But a piece of earthenware is not muktzah. So you might have thought that Rabbi Yehuda was telling you like this, not just on weekdays forbidden when you've got no reason to use it, just use a stone. But even on Shabbos, where you might have thought it's better to use earthenware because it's not muktzah, kamash malon, that you're not allowed to. Kamash malon, that even on Shabbos, when it's matter of using a piece of earthenware which is a kelia, not muktzah, or a stone which is muktzah, says Rabbi Yehuda, better use the stone rather than the earthenware because at the end of the day, earthenware is dangerous. Says the Gemara, Rava understood that Rabbi Yehuda was forbidding it because of the hair. He asked the question of Rabbi Yehuda that does he hold that you're not allowed to use earthenware? Why? Because he might cut hair. You see that even though you've got no intention, you're just trying to wipe yourself. And nevertheless, it's forbidden because of the fact that you're doing geizers. Allah is like a stam mishnah. With nanozi chayfe, if he's allowed to put his hands through his hair. What's a good word for it in English? What's chayfe in English? Well, what's a good word for English? Rubbing your hair, rubbing the hair. Scratching it, a fast face, and you're allowed to disentangle. But you're not allowed to comb. So we see the Abichon holds that even though if you put your hands through your hair, if you've got hair there anyway, if you put your hands through your forehead, and if you've got hair there, it's very likely the hair will come out. Nevertheless, it's mutter. Why? Because Dovashin miskavan. So Dovashin miskavan is mutter. So how can Abichon hold you not allowed to? Elo mechavelto kedam nosen barishio. That means like this. Abichon was not forbidding you want to wipe yourself with earthware because of geizes. Why? Why is there no problem with geizes? Because Dovashin miskavan. What he was forbidding was for a person to do it because of the fact that it's kshofim. And he was saying not only on weekdays it's forbidden, but even on Shabbos, where you might have thought, look, I'm doing something good because I'm not using a stem which is muksa, Kumashron is forbidden. My kshofim, what does it mean witchcraft? They were going on a boat. And this noble woman said to them, I want to go in the boat with you. They refused to let her on the boat. She said some witchcraft, and she locked the boat. She knew how to do magic, and she stopped the boat from moving. They said some magic, and they undid it. They were able to undo the powers of witchcraft. She said to them, what can I do to you? Meaning, how can I harm you? Why not? You never wipe top of Pei Samud Aleph. She now lists out all the ways they protected themselves from witchcraft. You never wipe yourself when you go to the bathroom with earthenware, and therefore you're not prone to be damaged. You never kill a lice while it's on your clothes, which is also bad for witchcraft. When the gardener would collect a bundle of vegetables, he would wrap them up and bring them to the owner. Right? That's what the gardener used to do. Let's say a bundle of leek and bring it to the gardener. Now, some people would untie the bundle and eat it. And some people, instead of untying the bundle, would just pull out one piece of vegetable and eat that. Now, if you pull out just one piece of vegetable and eat that, it is dangerous. So therefore, since they never did that, but rather they would always undo the bundle, therefore, they were safe. So we see from over here, if a person wants to be safe from witchcraft, he should never use earthenware to wipe, never kill a lice on his clothes, and never eat from a bundle without untying the bundle. Don't pull one vegetable out, but rather untie the entire bundle. Avuna said to his son, Rabba, why don't you go and learn by Rav Chisda? Because his teva is very sharp. Avuna was telling off his son, Rabba, why don't you go to learn by Rav Chisda's yeshiva? What's the point of going to him? When I go to him, he sits me down and discusses with me matters which are unimportant. He discusses with me things which are not important. He tells me things like this. When a person goes to the bathroom, a person shouldn't sit forcefully. A person shouldn't force themselves to sit down. And a person shouldn't push too hard. Why? The muscles of the anus, I should say, of the bathroom, or the muscle, they sit on 3 teeth, meaning on three pieces of skin. If a person works too hard, if a person pushes too hard or sits too hard, he can undo these teeth, these pieces of skin, and it gives some danger. Meaning that a person has to be careful going to the bathroom, that there's dangerous things that a person can be doing, not to push too hard. So his father said to him, he's telling you things that keep you alive. But you're saying that he's telling you things which are not important. Of course you should learn by him. And in fact, Rabbi went to learn by Rav Chisda. And there are many different halachas that we know from Rabbi, the son of Rav Huna, named Rav Chisda. And then he listened to his father. You can see over here that he was teaching him how to behave in the bathroom, and these were all important halachas. The more now it carries on with these halachas, if a person got a choice between a pebble or a piece of earthenware, which one should he use to wipe himself? You should use a pebble, not an earthenware. Why? Because earthenware might cut it. But you should use a piece of earthenware. You shouldn't use a stone. Why shouldn't you use a stone? Because it's muktzah. A stone is muktzah. It says clearly that you should use earthenware, not a stone. To yuvta davona, it's a kashan avona. We're talking about the handle of a pot. That means earthenware is dangerous. Why is earthenware dangerous? Sorry, why is earthenware dangerous? Because it cuts. And it can cut the skin where a person needs to go to the bathroom. But if he uses the handle of a pot, that's not dangerous. Since it's not dangerous, so therefore that is what we're discussing. But a normal piece of earthenware is dangerous. We have two opinions. What a person should use, either a stone because it's less dangerous, or earthenware because it's not muktzah. Bobby says you've got no raya from this price because this price is talking about the handle of a pot. Mokai is on another shayla. If a person's got either a pebble or some grass, you should use a pebble. You shouldn't use grass. You should use grass and not a pebble. This is just a question: what works better? Is it better? So, there's machlokas. Some say that it is dangerous, that the grass can cut, and that's why you shouldn't use grass. Another madam says, no, grass doesn't cut, it's not dangerous. Others say it's a shayla of Issa Shabbos, whether grass, when you do it, whether it's Issa Toilish. We'll talk about whether there's grass on the pebble and you're using the grass. Rashi doesn't like the pshat because of Toilish, because the Gemara earlier told us there's no Issa Toilish on the grass, because it's Domash in Miskava. Okay. So the Gemara says, which one is better? It's Machlokas. Pashas the Gemara is, which one is less likely to cut? Is stones less likely to cut, or grass less likely to cut? If a person wipes something which fire can consume, it's very, very bad. His teeth will fall out, meaning the muscles of when the person goes to the bathroom. So you see that you're not allowed to use grass because grass can be consumed by fire. If they're moist, then it's okay. If they're dry, then it's no good. And therefore, persons should not use dry grass because dry grass can get consumed easily by a fire, and therefore it's forbidden. The Ramah already asks the question, a very, very big problem, is how do we wipe ourselves with paper nowadays? Toilet paper is something which gets easily consumed by fire. And the Gemara over here tells us that one should never use anything that can be easily consumed by fire. There are two basic answers, there are many answers. The two main ones the priest can bring us as follows. One is that this is all in the olden days, but they would go to places in the outer fields where there were a lot of shading, there were a lot of demons, and these would cause tremendous harm. Nowadays, they would go to rooms, but there's no shading. Therefore, this whole problem of using something that can be consumed by fire is not applicable. Others say that our toilet paper is particularly soft. It's not like the other things that they had in those days. And actually, there's another mahalach is that that indeed nature has changed. Either way, Vice and Ramah already says that one is allowed to use toilet paper, and even though the Gemara over here says that one shouldn't use something which can be consumed by fire, Ramah says it's okay. Says the Gemara, person needs to go to the bathroom, doesn't bother going. They have a bad breath. They have a dirty breath. That means not going to the bathroom can cause tremendous harm if a person needs to go. And this is in the cover. Someone needs to go to the bathroom and eats. If a person eats while he still needs to go to the bathroom, it's like lighting a fire over the dead coals of a previous fire, which is very, very hard to get the fire going. The way to get a good fire going is to clear away all the rubbish that remained from the previous fire, and then to light the new fire. But if you try and light a fire on the remnants of the previous fire, that doesn't work. So too, if you try and eat food while you still got remnants of the previous meal, it's no good. The person should first go to the bathroom and then go and then eat. But a person shouldn't eat while he still needs to go to the bathroom. Like he can't light a fire in the remnants of the previous one. And not being careful about this causes bad smelling breath. If a person needs to go to the bathroom, is not able, he's got constipation. Should stand and sit, stand and sit. The motion of sitting constantly a few times helps the person go to the bathroom. He should go to the sides. Rashi explains, he should get up, go to one corner of the room, and then get up and go to another corner of the room and sit down. And then walking around, sitting down in different corners of the room, that will help. You should take a pebble, that we mentioned earlier, and feel around that hole. And by feeling around, that helps the person relieve himself. He should remove his mind. He should think about something else. If he takes his mind off the problem, he'll have it even harder, it'll be even worse. So of course it's no good. It's no good taking his mind off the problem. He should stop thinking about other things. If a person has constipation, he should stop thinking about all the other things, and then that way he will be able to go to the bathroom. I saw this Arab, the Kamva Yosef. He stood up and sat. At the Shafak Kedera, he was able to relieve himself like pouring out of a pot, meaning very, very, very easily. And the same idea that if a person stands and sits, it really, really works well. Person's going to go to a long meal. And in the old days, the bathrooms were far away. And going to the long meal, you didn't want to have to get up in the middle to go to the bathroom. So you wanted to make sure before you started that you didn't need to go. So what you do, you should walk 10 times 4 amos, and each time sit down. And then all 4 times 10 amos. You should go to the bathroom. You can sit down without being concerned that he'll need in a few minutes, because since he did 10 times 4 amos, or 4 amos 10 times, or 4 times 10 amos, and each time he sat down, that makes sure that he will not need to keep going. You have to remind ourselves that one thing, I think to ourselves, we're so used to having our bathrooms. Victor Miller speaks about this a very lot. The wealthy person of 200, 300 years ago did not have the comforts that we have. Imagine all these Gemaras, you read these Gemaras, how complicated it was, how difficult it was. You would have to use stones, and which size stones, and how we have to be tremendous HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we don't have to go through all this. I'd like to finish the pig. It's only a few minutes. It's nice to finish pig because it's a whole new topic tomorrow. Cheres, how much earthenware do you need to take to be chayv? To put between one slat and another slat. That means what happens was they used to use earthenware to put between the boards so they shouldn't crush each other. That's the Rabbi Yehuda. So that was Rabbi Yehuda. In order to stoke the fire, if you want to take some fire out of a big bonfire, take a piece of coal, you need a bit of earthenware to pull out the fire. In order to hold the revius in the piece of earthenware. Even though I've got no proof, the pasuk there is describing the destruction of Mitzrayim, describing it as a great big wall that falls, collapses, and breaks into smithereens, and into such small pieces there won't even be a piece of earthenware big enough to pull something out of a fire. So we see that piece of earthenware, something big enough to pull out of a fire, that's valuable. Is that's where you're bringing your raya from? The pasuk carries on, and to draw water from a well. So you see that the earthenware can either be used to pull something out of a fire or to draw water out of a well. So why do you say, again, we have 3 opinions in our Mishnah how big a piece of earthenware has to be of value. Either to take something out of a fire, or to put something between slats, or to be able to hold the revius. Rabbi says, I bring your raya from a pasuk. Says, Rabbi, the continuation of that pasuk backs me up. Let's miss out the brackets. The brackets is a mistake. So the Gemara says, that means, makes sense that the size of a revius is bigger than the size of pulling something out of a fire. How big a piece of earthenware needs to be to pull out of a fire can be very, very tiny. Because what happens is, you just need a small piece of plastic thing to pull things out of the fire. But, umikro from the pasuk, shir d'Rameir nofish, is the pasuk sounds like saying that Rameir's shir is bigger. Why? What When the pasuk describes how the wall smashes into smithereens and there's not a single big piece left, so obviously it's going to say not even that size and not even a smaller size. So therefore, we see that the size of a revir to hold water is smaller than the size to draw something out of a fire. But logically, it's the other way around. To pull something out of a fire, you just need something very, very small to pull something out of a fire. To draw water, it needs to be much bigger. And says the Gemara, we're talking about from a very, very big fire. When you have a very, very big fire, even if you want to pull something out which is very small, that you need to have a big piece of earthenware. Why? Because if it's a very small piece of earthenware, as you put your hand next to the fire, your fingers might get burnt. So you want to keep a certain distance from the fire. Since you need to keep a certain distance from the fire, so therefore it is necessary to have a very big piece of earthenware. So Rameir's Shiur is actually bigger than the size of Rabbi Yossi. And then if it says, well, Rabbi Yossi, is that a proof? It says, well, Shapi Kabli Rabbi Yossi says correctly to Rameir. What's he saying to Rameir? That the apostle continues that the wall will be so small that the pieces will not be big enough to even hold the reverse of water. So you see that water, that's even smaller. The Pasuk says as follows: the wall, it's a symbolic, it's a metaphor for the destruction of Mitzrayim, but the wall will break down into pieces, into such small pieces that you won't be able to use it for anything. Not only for something which is valuable, i.e., to take things out of a fire, there'll be not remaining, and even something which is useless for people, like to draw water, they will not find. Meaning that there'll be nothing left, not something which is useful, and not something which is not useful, meaning that drawing water is not useful. And therefore, you've got no right from the Pasuk that a piece of earthenware that's big enough to draw water out of a well is considered big enough. And that's why from the Pasuk is no right. And that here, it's got to be here. Look, I thought we would have a picture of earthenware to here he's got it, sorry. Here's got a picture, if you look, a piece of earthenware to put between the slats, that they shouldn't all crush each other. You can see tiny pieces of earthenware. And here, he's got a piece of earthenware to pull something out of the fire. If you look at the picture, one person has one to pull something out of the fire, a piece of earthenware to pull something out of the fire, and the next one, a piece of earthenware to draw water out of the well. So those are the two pictures. One is to draw water out of the fire. So there are three different opinions. The Gemara says that the smallest is the amount to take water out of a well. The next figure is the one to take something out of a fire. Mazel tov, everybody. If you can all get a l'chaim out. I know I went a bit faster, but it's all the truth of that is it's a very easy Gemara. It's just basically different products and what you can do with them and what's considered valuable. But the next, it's quite light Gemaras. And l'chaim, let me just have a l'chaim. L'chaim. Simchas, we should finish. We're well past halfway through Shabbos, even though we've only done 8 prokim and there's 24. But the fact is that the first prokim are much longer. So we're past halfway in Shabbos. Quite an amazing thing to think. Any questions? Any questions? Is everybody having a l'chaim? You don't have a l'chaim? Oh, Ben's joining me.
Too early in the evening.
Nobody. Okay, l'chaim. Mazel tov. Oh, Talal, are you going to have a l'chaim? It's not too early in the evening for you, surely.
That means I need to get off the couch.
No.
Hi, Mazel tov.
Mazel tov. Oh.
Ben, will you drop one off?
Oh, Yossi, you're doing well.
Still have to get off the couch if he drops one off.
Yeah, Ben is not on the couch.
No,
What do you have to do?
His mother's still alive, it's not for his mother. His father is in Beanstalk, as far as I know at the moment.
Is somebody saying something to the Shiur?
I'm sure you're aware that.
And then again, I'm an unsung
we sent
hero,
something
so you
before
can
we
all come and
answered,
drop me
so
off some
appreciated.
whiskey.
Just have to shut down everything. It was very appreciated. I noticed today another payment came.
He's having a private conversation. Okay.
It's just that.
Very good. That's not
You can hear the messages.
I'm getting by.
We're hearing somebody talking. I'm not sure it is.
You're not on mute.
Very good. Okay, it's luck with everything. Shabbos.
Sure.
Shabbos. Bye bye.
Go.